Thomas Sullivan had forgotten what it felt like to be surprised by life. At 58, he'd built an empire in Boston's commercial real estate, deals in downtown towers, polished projects near Back Bay, and enough influence that people returned his calls on the first ring. He owned multiple homes, drove cars that cost more than most people's houses, and wore suits tailored so perfectly they looked like they'd been drawn onto him. Success had been good to Thomas, but somewhere along the way, it had also made him cynical. On this particular Tuesday morning in Boston, Thomas was running late for a meeting that could cost him millions. A major investor was in town, and the final numbers were supposed to be signed today. No delays, no excuses. His black Rolls-Royce glided through the city like a quiet threat until it didn't. 3 blocks from his destination, the car started making an ominous grinding sound. At first it was faint, like something rubbing where it didn't belong. Then it got louder, a quick squeal followed, and just like that, the engine coughed and died. Now the Rolls sat stalled near the curb, hood up, a thin wisp of smoke curling into the crisp autumn air. The street noise didn't stop for him. Cars kept flowing, people kept walking, but Thomas felt like the world had personally insulted him. He stood on the sidewalk with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in a clipped, controlled voice to his assistant. "I don't care if you have to drag a mechanic out of bed, Margaret. I need this car fixed in the next 20 minutes. Nearby, his 3 business associates hovered like impatient shadows. Greg Whitman, Derek Caldwell and Ethan Brooks checking watches, tapping phones, muttering about schedules. They were all cut from the same cloth as Thomas, successful, impatient, used to problems being solved with a phone call and a credit card. That's when a small voice spoke up from behind them. "I can fix this." Thomas turned. A boy, maybe 12 or 13, stood on the sidewalk, small for his age, with gentle brown eyes and worn clothes that had clearly seen better days. His shirt was too large, his jeans were frayed at the cuffs, his sneakers were held together with duct tape. At his feet sat a battered toolkit, the kind most adults would overlook, and under him was a small wooden crate, like he'd been using it to reach something higher than his own height. The boy's face was earnest, hopeful even, as he looked at the expensive car with its hood raised like a mechanical beast in distress. Greg let out a chuckle. "Did you hear that?" he said, looking at Derek. "The kid thinks he can fix a Rolls-Royce." Derek smirked. "That's adorable. Son, this isn't a bicycle. This car is worth more than most things." Ethan shook his head, amused. People have no idea what they're looking at. But the boy didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply looked directly at Thomas and repeated, quieter this time, like the truth didn't need volume. "I can fix it. I've been watching YouTube videos about engines for 2 years, and I work at Mr. Patterson's garage after school. I know what that sound means." Thomas felt his jaw tighten. He was about to wave the boy away and return to his call because that's what men like Thomas did, but something made him pause. Maybe it was the complete absence of doubt in the boy's eyes. Maybe it was the strange confidence that didn't feel like arrogance. Or maybe it was a memory, faint but persistent, of Thomas himself years ago being young and dismissed by adults who assumed they knew better. "What's your name?" Thomas asked, surprising even himself. The boy straightened a little. "Liam, sir. Liam Murphy." "And you think you know what's wrong with my car, Liam?" Liam nodded once. "Yes, sir. It's the serpentine belt." Greg snorted softly, but Thomas didn't look away from the boy. Liam continued, calm and specific. "I heard it before the engine stopped. The grinding sound, then that squeal. That's the belt shredding. It can happen if it's worn out or if oil got on it. It's actually an easy fix if you have the right belt." The associates laughed again, automatic, reflexive. Thomas raised one hand, and to their surprise the laughter stopped. "And I suppose you just happen to have the right belt," Thomas said. The words were skeptical, but his tone carried curiosity now. Liam shook his head. "No, sir, but there's an auto parts store nearby. They'd have it, and I've got my tools." He patted the toolkit as if it were an old friend. Thomas studied the boy's face. There was no bravado there, no performance, just quiet confidence earned, not imagined. And suddenly Thomas saw, not a kid in ragged clothes, but a version of the world he'd tried to leave behind. His father had been a mechanic too, hands always rough, nails always stained, pride always intact, a man who believed any problem could be solved if you understood it well enough. Thomas swallowed. "How much?" he asked. Liam looked uncomfortable, like money wasn't the point, but he knew it mattered. "I don't know, sir. Whatever you think is fair." Something in Thomas's chest shifted, small but real. "Tell you what," Thomas said. "You fix my car in 20 minutes, I'll give you $500. Liam's eyes widened. The associates fell silent, exchanging looks. $500 to a kid who looked like he hadn't had a new pair of shoes in years. "But," Thomas continued, If you can't fix it, you don't get anything, and you don't waste more than 20 minutes of my time. He looked at Liam, testing him. Deal. Liam's expression turned serious, like a grown man being offered a contract. Deal. Thomas glanced at his watch. Starting now. What happened next was something Thomas Sullivan would remember for the rest of his life. Liam grabbed his toolkit, slid his wooden crate closer to the car, and climbed up to peer into the engine compartment. His hands moved with surprising confidence, touching, testing, tracing mechanical connections Thomas couldn't begin to understand. 30 seconds in, Liam nodded. Just like I thought, he said. Serpentine belt shredded. He pointed to a twisted strip of rubber hanging loose. The good news is nothing else seems damaged. I just need the replacement. He hopped down, pulled a small notebook from his back pocket, and quickly wrote down a part number like he'd done it 100 times. Mr. Sullivan, sir, could someone run to the parts store and get this belt? They might need the number. Thomas didn't hesitate. Greg, he said. Greg blinked. Me? You're the fastest runner among us, Thomas replied. Deadpan. Go. Greg muttered something under his breath but took the notebook and hurried off. While they waited, Liam didn't waste a second. He began carefully removing the damaged belt, explaining each step as he went, not talking down to anyone, just sharing knowledge like a teacher who truly understood what he was teaching. Most people think luxury cars are too complicated to fix, Liam said, loosening a component with a small wrench. But they're just cars. The principles are the same. Derek raised an eyebrow. You learned all this from videos? Liam shrugged. Videos helped, but the garage helped more. He paused for a fraction of a second, then added softly, My dad used to teach me too, before he passed away. The words landed heavier than Liam probably intended. For the first time, Thomas saw the bigger picture. This kid wasn't trying to impress anybody, he was trying to survive, and still somehow stay curious. Liam continued working, voice steady again. My dad used to say every machine is just trying to do its job. You just have to listen to what it's telling you. Thomas felt something unfamiliar rise in him. Humility. 8 minutes later, Greg returned, slightly out of breath, belt in hand. He held it up like a trophy he didn't know how to celebrate. They had it, he said, surprised. Liam smiled, polite and grateful. Thank you. Then he went to work. He threaded the new belt through the pulleys with practiced precision, adjusted the tension, and double-checked his path like he was reading a map only he could see. At one point he paused, closed his eyes, and seemed to visualize the layout. Then he made a tiny adjustment Thomas barely noticed. Okay, Liam said at the 18-minute mark, climbing down off the crate. Try starting it now. Thomas slid into the driver's seat. For a moment he hesitated like he couldn't fully accept that a child might have solved a problem his money couldn't solve quickly enough. Then he turned the key. The Rolls-Royce purred to life, smooth as silk. The grinding was gone. The engine sounded like it had never been sick at all. Ethan let out a low whistle. Derek actually clapped. Even Greg, still holding his phone like a shield, stared at Liam like he'd just seen something that rearranged his assumptions. Thomas stepped out slowly, like the ground under him had changed. He pulled his wallet from his jacket, counted out $500 in crisp bills, and handed them to Liam. Liam took the money with shaking hands, eyes glistening. Thank you, sir, he said. Thank you so much. This will help my mum with rent. Wait, Thomas said. He pulled out a business card, thick paper, clean font, the kind people didn't throw away. He wrote something on the back, and handed it over. This is my personal number, Thomas said. Call me tomorrow evening. Liam frowned, confused. Why, sir? Thomas looked at the boy, really looked. Because I spent 30 years building my business, he said. And I forgot something important along the way. The associates went silent again. I forgot that value isn't measured in the cost of things, Thomas continued. It's measured in the quality of character. He pointed gently toward Liam's toolkit. You have something rare, Liam. You have skill and humility together. That's worth more than this car, and more than any building I own. Liam didn't speak. He just listened, like someone hearing a door unlock for the first time. Thomas took a breath and surprised himself with the next words. I started out closer to you than you think. My father was a mechanic too. Somewhere along the way, I started believing success meant leaving that world behind, maybe even looking down on it. He shook his head, ashamed now that he could say it out loud. But you reminded me today that honest work done with integrity and knowledge is a kind of wealth most people never touch. Liam's face tightened. The kid was fighting emotion in public like he'd been forced to learn too early. Thomas continued, firm now. When you call me tomorrow, we'll talk about your future. I know people who run technical schools, scholarship programs, paths you don't even know exist yet. Liam opened his mouth, then closed it. My mum needs help, he managed finally, voice small. Your mother will be taken care of, Thomas said, leaving no room for debate. You just focus on being a kid and getting an education. Liam nodded, unable to speak. Then Thomas did something that stunned everyone, especially himself. He stepped forward and pulled Liam into a brief, solid embrace. "Thank you," he whispered. "You fixed more than my car today." That evening, Thomas called his wife Kathleen from his office. His voice sounded different, less sharp, more human. He told her the whole story, the breakdown, the boy, the belt, the way he'd felt his own pride crack. "I've been so focused on winning," Thomas admitted, staring out at the city lights. "On accumulating, on proving I'm better than everyone else." He paused. "I forgot what my father tried to teach me. I forgot grace." Kathleen was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, gently, "So what are you going to do?" Thomas didn't hesitate. "I'm going to help that boy," he said. "Really help him. Not just throw money at the problem. I'm going to make sure he gets every opportunity I had and more." He swallowed. "And Kathleen, I think I'm going to start doing things differently. All this wealth, what's it worth if I'm not using it to lift someone up?" True to his word, Thomas called Liam the next evening. Within 2 weeks, Thomas arranged for Liam's mother to receive a job at one of his property management companies. Better pay, benefits, stability. He set up an education fund for Liam that would carry him through high school, trade school, or college, whatever path Liam chose. But more than that, Thomas began mentoring him. Once a week they'd meet for dinner. Thomas would share business wisdom, life lessons, stories from his own journey. Liam would share his dreams, his fears, and his insights about mechanics and engineering. Over time, their relationship became one of the most important connections in Thomas Sullivan's life, because it reminded him week after week that wisdom isn't the exclusive domain of the wealthy and successful. Sometimes the greatest teachers come in the smallest packages, wearing worn-out sneakers and carrying battered toolkits. 3 years later, Thomas attended Liam's high school graduation. The boy who once stood on a crate beside a broken Rolls-Royce now walked across the stage like someone who belonged in the future. Thomas felt tears on his face before he even realized he was crying. Kathleen squeezed his hand. "You changed his life," she whispered. Thomas shook his head. "No," he said. "He changed mine." And it was true. That day in Boston, when a small boy with a giant heart said, "I can fix this," he fixed far more than a shredded belt on an expensive car. He fixed something broken in a millionaire's soul, something Thomas hadn't even known needed repair. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most unexpected teachers, and sometimes, if we're very lucky, being wrong is the first step toward becoming right again.